Ay. Otra vez. Come here. Let me say something. I remember Tampa, the way she used to be, the places we would run to, the faces we would see. Yes, I remember Tampa, those precious memories, a city rising on the move, a simple yet progressive groove. I remember Tampa, and she remembers me. Yeah. She remembers me.
Welcome to the Tampa Native Show. Stay tuned now for the fastest 60 minutes in cable broadcast history. Live from the studios at TVCN, the home of the Tampa Native Show. Join your host, Mario Nunez, as he celebrates growing up in Tampa. From Shock Armstrong to Shakey's Pizza, from Braddock Street to Buffalo Avenue. Get ready to call in and tell us your stories, because sharing your memories has never been this much fun. And now, your host, Mario Nunez.
She remembers me.
Hi, Tampa Native Show fans. Welcome back to this, your Thursday night, 7 o'clock edition of the Tampa Native Show. We're so happy that you're joining us tonight, because tonight's going to be a very, very special night. Joining us for the fourth time tonight in just a couple of minutes will be Mr. Jack Espinosa, a Tampa treasure, the keeper of the stories. He's just recently published a second book. His newest book is called Saka Fiesta. It is out and available. Jack's going to be doing some book signings here very shortly. We're going to be talking about that in just a little bit. Before we get going, I want to make sure that I catch everybody up to date on what's happened over last week, and we had an action-packed week. Apologies to those who were watching last week and desperately trying to send us emails. We received about 3 or 4 of them after the show. We had last week with us Sandy Ficca, of course, David Muse from Firefall. And I know Rodney Justo, who was out there watching, was desperately trying to get to us because we didn't take phone calls. And of course, Mario had the wrong email open. So that was really my fault, not anything due to email complications other than Mario just wasn't connecting. But we had a great time with Sandy and David on Friday. We had the good fortune of getting backstage passes. We were able to get to the show early, Ruth Eckert Hall. And Firefall did not disappoint. After Firefall finished their quick set, about 45 minutes worth, we got to listen to Little River Band and the Florida Symphony Orchestra, which was really special because one of the band members with Little River Band kind of put together this very special arrangement, incorporated that symphony orchestra sound. And if you're familiar with Little River Band, which most of us are, that string of hits backed up with the Florida Symphony really was something special. Thank you, Sandy, for getting those tickets for us. We really, really did have a great time. Talk a little bit about this week. Where was I on Tuesday night? Tuesday night? Yep, Tuesday night I was at the TBX meeting. Well, what's the TBX, you might ask? TBX is all over the news here lately. Tampa Bay Express. You know that for those of us that really apprise our history here in Tampa, and we can talk to Jack about this in just a couple of minutes. This new boondoggle of a highway expansion that they're trying to force down our throat, $9 billion worth of taxpayer money, is really not going to do anything but just cause more congestion. You know, there was a wise old guy sitting under a tree one time. They asked him, hey, what do you get when you add 6 lanes or 8 lanes of highway? I think he scratched his beard and came out with the answer, well, you get more traffic. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to just get more cars. We don't even have an HOV lane to speak of. What we need really and truthfully in Tampa is multimodal. And by that we mean trains and light rail and heavy rail and water taxis and Uber and rickshaws and gondolas and whatever it takes to move people excuse me, from point A to point B. We've got to find a way to do that. Not just more pavement, which will, oh, by the way, expand the highway to over 400 feet in width, 16 lanes of highway, 4 very expensive toll lanes that you're going to be expected to pay after your taxpayer donation to pay for that $9 billion. And then in addition to that, places like La Segunda Central Bakery will be leveled on the corner of historic 15th Street and 15th Avenue. Richard Gunsmart, after putting all of that money, effort, and energy into Eulalie, is going to have a disaster at his doorstep because that whole malfunction junction will dump right out in front of his restaurant. And the Waterworks Park that the city is so proud of will also be demolished. So we haven't even finished with the construction that's been going on for the last 12 years. So much so, I'll ask Jack about this in a minute, how he feels about it. I don't remember the interstate without barricades. And I think the only person getting paid on this thing is Bob. Who owns Bob's barricades? I think those orange cones anymore are just part of the landscape, like the palm trees. It's pretty preposterous. I'm looking at it as it's going to be ineffective. It's already proven to be ineffective in South Florida where they had this already in play. Also, it's just going to, the stake they drove through our heart in 62, 63 when they brought in the interstate system that split Ybor City in half, north and south, that all but decimated West Tampa, Tampa Heights and Seminole Heights. This $9 billion boondoggle will finish that job. And you know, Tampa Heights, Seminole Heights, Ybor City, and even parts of West Tampa are just now starting to experience the rebirth in full. That renaissance is just now coming of age, so to speak. Property values are starting to once again rise. People, young people, millennials are starting to find those properties and move back in. And here we go. Okay. Enough said about TBX. If you don't know about it, get involved. Sunshine Citizens, we had them on the show 2 weeks ago. Sunshine Citizens are doing some tremendous yeoman's work. Please look them up. They have a website, stoptbx.org. And of course, they're on Facebook as Sunshine Citizens. Before I bring Jack on, forgive me, I'm trying to clear this frog out of my throat. I think I do have a lozenge, and I'm going to put it in my mouth in just a minute. There's something in the studio that each and every week gets to me. So let me go ahead and read a little excerpt from Jack's book called Saka Fiesta. And he'll explain to us what that term means here in just a minute. But this one in particular, as I was reading this, got to me. Because I think it says everything you need to know about what's in Jack's heart, what's the essence of his spirit. And it really goes all the way back to his youth and his mother. Jack starts by saying, talent comes from Mother Nature's slot machine. It comes in many forms: melodious vocal cords, an inner sense of rhythm, prosperity to create musical sounds on some man-made instrument, eye and perception to recreate on canvas. For athletics, ability to create drama, mirth, jollity, merriment, all for the glorious purpose of bringing to a life full of toil, disappointment, and often tragedy, a joyful respite in the form of song, dance, music, hilarity, laughter, that mysterious, indefinable, joyous noise erupting from the uncontrollable contentment. An exclusive virtue endowed to humans and perhaps other apes, he says. It is undoubtedly the best known treatment for melancholia, depression, hypochondria, and perhaps various and sundry other ailments afflicting mankind. Put all those talents, in quotes he says, put all those talents together and you have what we call entertainment, a hominine endeavor of love whose final product is happiness. You know, that thing that money cannot buy unless you can afford a ticket to the show. How horrible an existence we would have without it. Yet there was such a time when, living in caves, man's first effort for survival, his daily chores might have included: 1, find something to kill and eat; 2, find liquid and drink it; 3, keep from getting eaten; 4, keep the fire going. And he says this was almost number 1. Number 5, don't piss off the guy with the big stick. Number 6, try to get laid. And number 7, if things aren't working out, move. Well, I just wanted to read that passage to you from his book because I think to know Jack, to love Jack, is to know that throughout his entire life, he has been entertaining us with his stories, with his quips, with his own life story that has evolved through comedy, through entertainment, Ladies and gentlemen, let me go ahead and introduce you once again to our dear friend and a Tampa treasure. Bring him up on the two-shot, Becky. Here's Jack Espinosa joining us once again. Jack, thank you so much for being here.
Did I write that?
You did write that.
That sounds a little better than I can write. You know?
Well, those are your words.
It must have been in one of my more tender moments.
I think. Jack, it all started. It sounds like, we talked before the show started that your mom was such a wonderful influence in your life.
Well, I didn't have anybody in my family that didn't have a sense of humor that was good. Mm-hmm. And maybe, I don't know, we were poor, but not so poor that we were so uncomfortable and so miserable that we couldn't laugh about things. We were probably, pretty bad off, but not as bad off as others. And we were kind of really in the middle of poverty. Mm-hmm. And it was in Ybor City, and the whole community had to have some respite from the tough depression life that we were living, because I was born, right into the Big Depression. We had one thing going for us. First of all, we had a multiple culture.
Sure.
Not one. And, they used to say Latins, put them all together. But, we had Sicilians. That was the minority within the minority. Then we had Cubans, who were the majority, and Spaniards. And, people say, well, they call everybody Hispanic that speaks Spanish, but that's not the case. Everybody that speaks English is not an Anglo-Saxon.
That's correct.
So there was the setting. They had to find some way, okay, in this new world that they were living in, to get medical care, which was prime, make a living, okay, and do all those things that you were talking about, and then a little respite. Well, they came from places that had theater, mm-hmm. even for the poor people. Mm-hmm. So when they established those clubs in Ybor City, the Centro Asturiano, the Centro Español, the Italian, the Ciclo Cubano, the Italian club, they all had theaters. And they had opportunity for people to perform. So if you were, I think of Philadelphia and up north where you had the media centers. Mm-hmm. Well, this was a village.
Literally.
But we had
amazing theater. Amazing theater.
And we had, that promotes music, singing, dancing, show business.
Sure.
Not only that, it's first class, because how many people starting today, let's say you were starting today in show business, you had a propensity to you have the show bug that I talk about. Mm-hmm. It's a disease. You got to get on stage. If you don't have a stage, in Ybor City we had 4. We had more, but I'm talking about the big ones. Dressing rooms,
footlights,
spotlights.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody has spotlights anymore. A spotlight,
curtain.
And curtains that open and close with a guy with a cigar that open a camellero.
Beautiful.
And all that for an amateur. So even if it was in Spanish, but it was theater. It was show business. I didn't have any talent. I had to invent something to get me on. Actually, what I was an actor, but there was no acting studio. We had bufos and we had zarzuelas, and when you saw those and you wanted to participate in that, there was a chance. Mm-hmm. For the La Juventud, the children, we had a shot. And the ones who had the bug, the disease, and I often talk about the poor guys that didn't find the gimmick like I did, because I had to invent something.
Sure.
I didn't have an act. I had to invent it. So, and I was lucky enough. It was all luck. Anyway, luck plays a big part in it. But if you have that disease, that bug, that show bug, you don't stop trying to get on, and you don't know what are you going to do, but you want to get on. And you think of this, and you think of that, and all of a sudden something happens. Like the Al Jolson story.
Wonderful.
Lip syncing.
Share that with us.
That was something that I had never heard of. Al Jolson, was one of the great entertainers he was the first.
Vaudeville.
Well, he was the first talkie movie.
Correct.
And he was the most popular. And he was the one who was one of the super entertainers, but then he faded like that. We're talking about how sad it is. So when they brought back the story of Jolson in the 40s, he was too old to be on, but he still had a very good voice. So he sang all the songs that made him famous through the lips of an actor that lip-synced what he was doing, Larry Parks. Larry Parks got a nomination for an Academy Award for it.
For pantomime.
Right. Everybody thought
But he was
at that time that we thought that was Al Jolson, and it was the old man singing.
Right.
Because what happened with Al Jolson, he sold millions of records. And that's when I jumped. Okay, I did my blackface stuff and I memorized everything he did, and that was my gimmick. And then I came, Spike Jones and this, and then I looked for all kinds of opportunities to do the same thing. I didn't have any jokes, I didn't have a routine, but that developed later. And I had theater. When I did a part in the Bufos, nobody knows what I'm talking about when I say Bufos, I explained it in there. At least you got a part in the play. It was a 3-act play, an intermission, and then you had the variety part. Well, the variety part is what got me in. So I got all that experience. I met Pilates. I mean, that we had some great actresses here. You know, Fox's...
Al Fox's aunt.
His aunt was one of the...
Dear friend of the show.
The other aunt, it was an opera singer, Carmen. But she was already much older, but Pilar was an actress. Take a back seat to nobody. I'm telling you, she was a consummate pro.
Here in Tampa.
In Tampa, and she was like many of us who can't leave this place.
Right.
But had the bug.
Right.
So she had a theater, and she could do it, and she made a few, but it didn't get rich, but she was outstanding, and I learned from those people. And Ramon Bermudez, that came from Bufos from Cuba. We had a wealth here that nobody understood except us because we spoke Spanish.
Correct.
But even the Sicilians went to these shows, and because the Sicilians, in the Spanish kind of language is mixed, and and a lot of the Sicilian girls that were born of those parents became singers, and they had a chance to get on stage and sing, and to perform and to act.
No small surprise, because theater in Spain, theater in Italy. I mean, we think of the great stages in Italy, we think of the great tenors, we think of the great singers, performers.
It was all here, and then
in a concentration too, Jack, because it was a small area, it was a village.
You couldn't get out.
Right.
So you had the same audience every week, and then you had to do different stuff.
Right.
It was a tremendous laboratory for a bum like me who didn't have any way of knowing what he was. I had the bug, but nothing else.
And what an outlet to express it.
What an outlet.
Yeah.
What an opportunity. And then, of course, Fiesta in Tampa and all that other stuff came over much later. But it was already, my father worked in theater here. But he was, working backstage with costumes and that, so he could get close to the girls.
Sure. There was a method to his madness.
Yeah.
Shall we explain to everybody that's just joining us perhaps now, or that's been with us from the beginning, and they want to know what exactly is a Saka Fiesta? Now, it's a colloquialism. It's a term. It's a term here.
I looked it up. Yeah, it's from us.
Okay, it is from us.
I'm not sure who us is. But it's been around since I remember.
Sure.
And I looked it up, and I said maybe, because I called Tony, whom I dedicated the book to, who was Tony's Saka Fiesta Productions, because I was a USO director here, and he was always pushing to have a fiesta party or something. It was all benefits.
Sure,
mostly.
Sure.
And I said,
wartime.
He said I did more USO shows than Bob Open. I don't know if I did or not, but he said so. And he was the one who was always pushing. He was always giving, even when I tried to get out of show business, he kept me in it. And of course, my family is what kept me out of it.
Right.
So I dedicated this book to Tony Saka Fiesta, who kept me in show business, and my kids and my wife and family who kept me with a straight life. So, and I'm glad I made the right choice, by the way. But I'm still in show business, just like you are.
Right.
You can't get out of it either.
It's
the bug, I can tell right here, and it's contagious.
It is. Not only is it contagious, but once it afflicts you, because it is an affliction.
Yeah.
It's lifelong.
Oh, yeah.
It's a commitment to, I think there's two things that happen when you're infected. Let's put it this way. Number one, it keeps you always on the edge to try to, stretch a little bit, to get new material. You're always trying to learn, to hone your craft.
I've been talking lately here to Dennis Popov, the rockers.
Of course.
This is one of the world famous heart surgeons. He can't get out of being of that band that he
A
created,
rocker.
the rocker and the band and the music. He told me, he read the book and he laughed and he called me and he said, Jack, that's me too, you know, because here's a heart surgeon.
Of course.
I was a government administrator.
Of course.
We can't get out of it because it's there.
It is.
And Saka Fiesta, by the way, going back to the title, you have, I looked up, and Saka means to take out or to promote.
Right.
Sacar, the verb sacar. So, Saka, I found out sacamuelas is slang for a dentist. Saka, pull out,
take out your tooth.
Take out or promote a tooth out of your head. And I have one, by the way, which I have breakfast with every morning, Carinanti, and my dear friend who was one of the great flyer mechanic, and there, Mastro Giovanni, who is one of my buddies. In the morning we get there and yell and scream at each other and argue. He was, the whole thing was, and I call him my tooth mechanic, okay? Saka Fiesta, Saka Muela. Okay, now Saka Puntas, I found out was a pencil sharpener.
Right.
Saka
The
Puntas.
point. Take out the point.
A point promoter. And in Ybor City, all these years we say Saka Fiesta, and it means somebody that's always promoting a festivity or party. The closest thing in English would be a party animal.
There you go.
And but
like a promoter.
we gave it another twist. For example, it's used in many, many ways. For example, and I have it in the book. You say goodnight to the girl, and you give her a little kiss, and all of a sudden, you know, things begin to get a little better, and you start moving your hand about her body, and she says, Alberto, no Saka Fiesta. Don't be promoting any other festivities. So
enough.
It has multiple usages, but it's very popular. Este siempre está sacando. He's always sacando fiesta. You've been to parties, the party's over. Somebody said, why don't we go over there and let's get some breakfast.
Sacando Fiesta, because it's not over yet.
Tony Garcia was my Saka Fiesta.
Oh, that's wonderful.
He called me on the phone, Jack, man, this is a good cause, man. Can you spare, can you do a little something? I said, Tony, I'm about to leave. I'm home for a few days. I was on the road. That's when I did the show at Pasiglia's Church, which opened the book with the magician that laid an egg.
The eggs.
Virtually.
And then he ran off stage.
But you know, I use that as an example of what in the world makes, you know, you have to have a lot of courage to get in front of a bunch of people.
Sure.
And do anything.
Anything.
Anything. And believe me, I have not met, and I've been in the business, well, since I was a baby, I haven't met one performer, and I've worked with Nat King Cole, I've been Johnny Ray, some of the big stars. Every one of them, I don't care how much experience they have, even if they're cool, just before they go on, they do something like,
release that tension, release that nerve.
I don't want to make an ass of myself today. That's what it is.
Right.
You live for that applause. And a comedian, it's a tough existence, you have to get a response. Stand-up comics.
Sure,
not clowns. Not a clown. A clown has a better chance. But a stand-up comic, which is something Americans invented, rapid fire. We invented, you know, the machine gun was here, and it's rapid fire. And that is what you do in a nightclub. And you have to get a response. You're going to have a laugh or some reaction every 20 or 30 seconds.
Which is incredibly difficult to do.
And then you build on it.
Right.
And then you live like a gorilla. You know, you go with the sway of the audience and you improvise. It's a tough business.
We've got some photos, Jack, and I think we need to show those in just a couple of minutes. But, you know, we talked earlier also, comedy especially, not so much dramatic acting, but comedy. It keeps you in your youth, Jack, because the comedian really, truthfully, never wants to give up that joke. He never wants to give up the punchline, and it serves two purposes, I think. Number one, it makes people feel good.
That's the whole game.
On a subconscious level, they don't know why, but I think it has to do with when you laugh and you release those endorphins.
If I'm responsible,
it's the medicine.
If I'm responsible for making you happy, I get a kick. I'm not doing you a favor. I'm doing it for me.
There you go.
I am feeding my ego.
There you go.
And you know, ego can be good or bad.
Sure,
you know,
of course.
Egos will separate us from dogs.
Of course.
And you can say, I made that. Casimiro, the owner of the Columbia restaurant, the old man.
Hernandez?
He never laughed.
En serio?
He come in and
No, his portrait on the wall in the lobby. He's like that.
I loved him. He was so, I mean, he was the one that counted the beans in the kitchen. And he would come in, I opened the Siboney room, you know, in the Columbia.
56.
And he comes and sits in the thing. And I don't know what I did, but I did it for him. Something about the kitchen, something. And he started laughing, and nobody had prepared something new. And I said, make us see me laugh. I think his face cracked. Because you know, that was a wonderful moment.
Sure.
When you do something, I've had, believe me, somebody told me that is, you know, we say we had them in the aisle. At the Central Tuniano one time, I did have them in the aisle. People were spilling out. It was one of those magic nights where everything is right. You know, I don't want to brag. I've never laid an egg anywhere, but I've always been afraid of it. To this day.
Probably what kept you from doing it.
I've worked at dumps that you cannot believe, some of the strip joints that I worked. If you survive one Saturday night at the Diamond Horseshoe over there in Rust City, you will never be afraid of anything again.
That's out there East Broadway.
The owner would come in with a pistol, fights, pap, shooting, the ceiling, it was drunk. The ceiling was full of holes. Look, I made an analogy between that and the Tampa Theater. They had stars.
The stars, the lights.
And there were little holes from a .22 caliber pistol that he would shoot.
You've got so many fans out there, Jack, well, the guys that meet with you at 5 o'clock in the morning, I heard from my pal, Robert Ferret, told me, don't keep the old man out too late because he's got to be at the meeting tomorrow at 5 a.m.
I'll be there no matter what.
Of course you will.
No matter
Little
what.
General, in the Little General, you'll be there. But the reality is I won't.
Andrea Mastro Giovanni and my Saka Muelas, Sam Carinanti.
They will all be there.
Very professional. And by the way, Andrea Mastro Giovanni is a pilot deluxe. He flew Lindbergh's flight by himself in an airplane by himself across. He went to Italy.
Transcontinental.
Unbelievable, very talented. But anyway,
when you get to
and
live
those
as
two
long
are
as
there
you have,
they're there every morning, and we just.
Do you open the place? What time is it? What time is it?
When I get there, Andreas is already sitting over there waiting for me.
And the coffee's on. Let's go ahead and show a couple of pictures, Beck, because there's a story behind each one. Tell us, Jack. There's the picture of Mr. Ramirez.
Oh my God, that is the first lady of theater, as far as I'm concerned, in this community. Pilar Ramirez. She was fabulous. We did a scene together. I was a bum amateur starter, and I was playing the part of a sacristan, you know, which is a sexton at the church, the one that cleans up and does it. And I was supposed to be very straight, you know, with a collar. And she was the old lady of the house. She was already very old at the time. And Dalia Fernandez, who was now Dalia Ragnon, who was in the she was a dancer with castanets. She was in that scene too. And anyway, all of a sudden, the old lady gets completely off the script. And you know, the apuntador, the guy in the bottom that was pointing.
He's watching, he's going, wait.
He's the guy that points and tells you what to say, the prompter, is in the shell in the bottom. She gets off the script completely, and she starts dancing because Dolly was supposed to, she started that. And she got up with it, and she lifts up her skirt, and she had these old bloomers underneath, the old lady, and and what am I going to do? I'm not supposed to be involved, but I started doing my Jerry Lewis dance, you know, in the middle of all. What the hell am I going to do? I couldn't stand still. You see the animal in me?
Of course.
And that place just tore apart. And after the curtain closed, people were still laughing. And backstage, I see her coming towards me, Pilar. And I said, oh, she's going to admonish me for jumping on her scene. And she looks at me, and she gives me a little hug like this. She holds my hand and says, Cabrón, tienes ángel. You have angel. I don't know what it meant at the time. I still don't. But I think it's what we were talking about here. There's a chemistry that happens between human beings, people that fall in love.
Yes.
I think it's chemical, because the chemistry in your body is what creates the electricity that makes you think and makes you move. And there must be something there that goes through the air, like radio.
Like radio waves. It's a
radio
vibration.
wave.
It's a
Of course,
vibration.
it's a vibration.
Yep.
And people communicate that way without speaking.
Correct.
And that happens between an audience and
an
this
actor.
one performer. And this animal that is an audience becomes one monster. And when that monster and you understand each other, you can say anything bad about that. You can insult them. You can do anything you want to, because they know what's in. There's some communication there that knows that you really love them, and it comes out. And television does it.
Sure.
You know, you can tell when somebody's sincere.
Sure.
You can feel it. And some people feel more than others because some people have more
sensibilities. Sure.
The more tendency to do that, they have more the propensity for that. Mm-hmm. And it's a gift, and everybody has it. But some people develop it more than others. But when that audience is conquered, that beast, that 7-headed monster with spews out fire, 2,000 of them like this turns into one animal, and it's eating out of this hand. That is an ego trip that most people, most humans cannot endure. That's what leads to, when it doesn't happen, when you get out of the bed, when that doesn't come along, it leads to drinking, it leads to drugs, it leads, look at the people in the movies that we've lost. That's what it is. That is a nourishment that they don't have, it's an addiction. I was able to live both lives because I had the fortune of being
being grounded,
of being big in the top in another country. And when I got off the plane here, maybe a dog would meet me at the airport.
Total anonymity. I think that what you're speaking to, Jack, is what made us all feel profoundly sad. And when I say all, I mean globally. And you're talking about that sentido. When we lost Robin Williams, I think everybody globally, because he touched us all the same way.
Let me tell you, if there's any such thing as a comedic genius, it was him.
Yeah.
I mean,
nothing he couldn't
Jonathan
do.
Winters is the other one.
And that was his protege, or that was his idol, I should say. That was his.
Those two.
Yeah.
Those two created scenes that by themselves. Well, that's really what a stand-up comic does.
Sure.
You create a scene, you create a story. But these guys picked it. They were
special. They were very, very special. Genius. I thought I'd mention that because, as you were saying that's the feeling that I got overwhelming, because I just saw a clip. Every once in a while, somebody will repost something on Facebook.
How sad it was.
Terribly sad. And again, we don't know the sadness.
I knew him.
Yeah, we all did. We all did.
Because that communication was there.
It absolutely was. Well, let's look at this man here doing something. I believe that's 1956 in the Siboney room. Is that right, Jack?
That's in the Siboney room. That's right.
The Columbia?
Yeah, that was back
where today you can still see the flamenco dancers dancing, by the way. They still do a floor show.
That was back when I was ugly.
Well, I wanted to ask you too, because we've seen this photograph here on the show before, and you talk about it in the book, and everybody knows full well that you had the elastic face. That's sort of the Jim Carrey, Jerry Lewis kind of effect, and of course you were rubbery so that you could transform yourself on stage. Well, I'm wondering, did you ever make it to Paris? And I know this is I know the answer to this question, because if you had, you may never have left there, because they really loved Jerry Lewis in Paris.
No,
and you fancied a lot of your...
What I did, Al Jolson, then I did Jerry Lewis because he was the Vogue. But I didn't want to do impersonations because, you lose yourself.
Correct.
So, people that impersonate others they're good and they last so long, but I did it was the Vogue of the time. Now, Jerry Lewis was the clown. He was like a Red Skelton. Phenomenal. He needed a straight man. Not in Paris. Not in Paris, because the French idea of comedy was a little different than ours. Our comedy here, what do we call American, this United States, we're talking about a combination of the straight-faced Englishman that has a suit on, and at the same time, through verbiage, makes people laugh. That's a stand-up comic. Now you combine that with some clowning, and then you've got an act. And that's what I didn't have the gags and the stuffing. I didn't have writers, but I developed that over the many years, and I had routines between the clown. So I had both worlds. Spike Jones opened the world for me because nobody saw. They heard Spike Jones, but they didn't see unless you were, you see. But I would take there would be 5 different people doing voices. And I would take all of those voices through me. So that was unique. When I did Cocktails for Two in Cuba, I wasn't supposed to go on. They did it as a courtesy, interviewing it. When they saw Cocktails for Two, they never saw anything like that. There's no Spike Jones in Cuba. The producer fell off the chair, the cameraman fell off. They were laughing like that night they put me on. Now that doesn't happen unless you're very lucky. And what am I doing in Cuba? I had already tried to get out of show business. I had done nightclubs here. I was already a professional. But I never got the big break. When I did get the big break in this country, I would already wanted to go home.
You had already...
I had made up my mind. If I do it in 5 years,
I'm stepping out. Let's talk about this picture right here.
Oh yeah, that's Paco Pé, the one with his wife, and that's my wife. Before we were married, and he came to Tampa to give me a certificate. Paco Pé was one of the big critics in Cuba. The newspaper, the top newspaper in Cuba.
Had a lot of palanca in Cuba, like we like to say here.
If Paco Pé said you were good,
you were there.
You were in. You were made.
It was like when Johnny Carson invited you to sit down next to him after you did your stand-up.
His word was, and his name was Frank. Paco Pé was his pen name, but he was top notch. And he came to Tampa to give me an award from the newspaper that he worked for developing good relations with Cuba at the time, and the cultural exchange and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Pre-Castro.
And he was here, yeah. And I was he treated me very well. The first performance, I got a big write-up, and I didn't even see it because, I came back.
Yeah, you're leaving Saturday night or Sunday morning to get back to your normal life.
No, I come here. I used to go down there Wednesday morning. Okay. I did the show Wednesday night.
Okay.
Top show in Cuba. It's an hour variety, like Led Sullivan show.
Sure.
And that night I'd catch a plane back, or I would come back the next morning early. So I didn't have time to see.
You didn't even get the morning papers.
No,
I didn't
I didn't know what they were saying about me. I knew I was going over because I had a big audience in the studio, and the lady that booked us was a bookkeeper at CMQ, which is top-notch station.
CMQ.
She would call me on the phone right to my house. Jack, can you make it done? Okay, that was the contract, an agreement on the phone. I go pick up the ticket at the airline, and in 90 minutes, and Wednesday morning, I'll be there in the morning. I went to the rehearsal for nothing. My act was already packaged.
Sure.
I go to the rehearsal just
to meet everybody and have a cup of coffee.
And not only that, it was a phenomenal experience. I did television, big television in Cincinnati here and all over. I mean, people rehearse and they get nothing, man. That day, everybody, they brought girls from all the different dancers from all the nightclubs. They were from different places. They put them all together. They did the routine that day. It's an hour show. Andres Geddes was one of the guys he was an extra. He's the one that picked a fight with Rocky Marciano.
Imagine Andres Geddes being an extra.
It was all there. And of course, Nat King Cole, Johnny Ray, whichever big star. And I'm closing the show. When I got off the plane here, when I got off the plane in Cuba, I was attacked by the reporters, and they was all big. When I got in big time, all right? In 90 minutes, I get off the airport in Tampa, maybe a tumbleweed would roll by, or a dog urinating under a lamp would meet me at the airport.
Wave at you as you walk by.
If that doesn't bring that bug down to nothing, now you live both lives.
Becky, roll a couple more pictures
for us. If you can survive that, you can do anything, right?
Well, that was, it was an exceptional
It was a wonderful thing.
This is a nice headshot here. We've seen this one before. This is a beautiful look here. Well, how old were you here, Jack?
I must be 22, 23, I guess.
Wow.
That was back when I was ugly.
Becky, are you rolling the pictures from the first show? Because I think these are the pictures from the first show.
Yeah, this one.
Yeah, we want to see the book.
This one here.
Let's talk about this because this is Senor Wences.
Yeah.
And Senor Wences apparently, I know the story here. Jack, tell us.
Senor Wences.
Soray?
Yeah, Soray. You remember, first of all.
Ed Sullivan.
His name is Jose. Wenceslao. Wenceslao. A very prominent name in Spain. That is one of the most talented people, and people didn't realize he was a juggler. He was an acrobat. He did all sorts of stuff. He was an artist and a cartoonist. So we're having dinner together, and I'm doing stories, Tampa, and he's doing stories, Spain. We're killing each other. We're laughing because this a different comedy. Spanish stories are like British, as what we do here, which is more Cuban, which is American, but like British and American, Spanish and Cuban. And he was laughing at my stuff, and I'm laughing at his. He was superb. He was a genius. And we're sitting there, and this waitress was looking at us and looking at us, and she comes to get autographs. Even me, you know. So he signs. So he was a very, very famous, and he signs. And she was kind of flat-chested. So he draws a cartoon. By the way, she was prettier than that, but you know what cartoonists can do? They get certain features of it. You know, it's her.
Eyes or ears.
And he put these big breasts on her and gave her it was on one of the menus.
Oh my goodness.
He was fabulous. By the way, the picture,
what an experience.
The picture before
you know
that.
who else was a pretty good artist too? Red Skelton.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, his art has been displayed, you know.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, and for many years, if you had the good fortune, I wasn't one, but if you had the good fortune of being one of his flight attendants on, you know, New York to LA, transcontinental, you know, and you asked him, he was always very generous. He would do something like that. He would sketch something for you on a napkin, and I've seen some of his work. He was very accomplished, just like Senor Wences was. What else you got for us, Beck? Can you talk about this page here?
That's Fiesta in Tampa. That's Ruben Favello, who was the director of the radio program. That Fiesta in Tampa that we took, and that's Sylvia Delgado. They call her La Novia de la Canción. She was one of those wonderful people that grew up here in Tampa, born here and raised here, and she specialized in Mexican songs, and her spot and then she acted in the plays, and she was around. Well, I worked with her for years, and she was we had almost like a family, that Fiesta in Tampa group, and it was one of those phenomenal things that happened. He had a radio program, and for some reason over here with this market that we had, they didn't have any radio program in Spanish, and he did it.
Was that Laura Latina that morphed into the Laura?
No, that was Laura Latina came afterwards. That was Fiesta in Tampa.
Okay.
WALT, and he was the first one. And believe me, it started with 1 hour, then it went 4 hours every day. And you could walk Ybor City down the street, and you wouldn't miss a song or anything that was played. And
coming out of the storefronts, everybody was listening.
Or the homes.
Well, because that was all
Radio.
we had. So it's almost like when Univision came on or Telemundo.
And Sylvia was one of the stars. And Dalia Fernandez, who was now Dalia Rañón. And Marta Suarez. Marta Suarez was a fantastic singer. And they had a guy that was blind that was a singer. We had and René Fuentes. And of course all the music. We left out the music. And I couldn't do enough about bands because there were imagine all these shows.
Well, you had to have music accompanying
and music to go with it.
Live music.
And the booths, sometimes there were only 3, but it was music played by live musicians, right?
Of course,
live music.
No.
But they didn't have recording. We didn't do like we do now with tapes. Back then, the musicians were
there and they were playing.
And the rockers that I mentioned in the book, and I have pictures of some of the other ones, the Conjunto Alegre, and all those other conjuntos that were there. You had music, dances, and in the dances you had floor shows. It was a vibrant situation for entertainment.
That was Tampa at its essence.
And of course, you know, Dennis Popello's band, the Rockers, I mentioned, is the recipient, the final blow of what came out of all that. And because it tied together Spanish, Italian, modern music, and rock. It put it all there, and they're all there now.
And they're still doing it.
They're still doing it.
You had the good fortune of being asked to be in Lynn Marvin Dinkfelder's documentary, because I think I saw a little excerpt where you were asked questions about the Rockers.
Dennis, I know
know
Dennis.
Dennis?
He was born.
Yeah, let's go to another picture, and then I want to get to tell everybody where they might be able to pick up their copy of Saka Fiesta, which Jack is going to be signing here shortly. Oh, I love this picture here, Jack. Who took the picture? This is you leaving for the big time, man. With your suit,
I won a
suitcase?
contest at the fair. There were 1,000 contestants over a 3-week period, and the winner was sponsored by Crosley, division of AVCO, big corporation that had a big studio in Cincinnati, network nationwide, and I won the contest at the state fair. So they sent a photographer And here I am, I'm going to go to the big time, right? And these are pictures that they took of me leaving my home. They had a photographer that Crosley sent because, you know, they publicized all this all over the country. And I had 2 weeks on national television, and it gave me a real springboard. And that's me leaving the house.
Give me a year, give me an age. Well, we know you were born in 1930, so you can give me the year, I can figure the age.
I was in my, probably 19.
Oh, wow. Wow.
19 or 20. I don't remember.
Get
my
on the
own
train?
birthday.
Get on the airplane? Train or airplane? How'd you
No,
go?
I went by air. They took me off first class. And there were the other pictures that I
At
didn't.
19, Jack?
They didn't include.
At 19?
Oh, I never been in an airplane.
How'd you
I worked at the, by the way, I had been in an airplane, but I worked at the airport.
Well, that's why it never left anywhere.
Yeah, and I flew around, but not in an airline.
Not like this.
You know?
Well, that just goes to show you, man, you know, how special it was. Part of the reason why we do the show here, Jack, how special it was growing up in Tampa. I think you and those that were right around your age group, let's say Ferdy that's a little bit older, Ferdy Pacheco that's a little bit older, we know your relationship, your long friendship with Rick Caceres that was amazing. Sure. We could talk about it. That's another show we can do together. We will, and we will again.
Rick was in the senior class play with me, and of course Fernando Noriega. That picture that there when I'm leaving and I'm waving at everybody, the house across the street is Fernando Noriega's house. He lived across the street from.
Well, I'm just going to say it. You grew up arguably. You and your contemporaries, and the two boys that I have written down here, because how could we not mention Leonel Hernandez and Bobby Rodriguez, who were two of your pals growing up, Robert Fernandez, Joe Canto. We need to talk about those guys real quick, but you saw the best of Tampa because you saw it coming from the earliest years, the village years.
We were the bridge.
Yes, you were going through the Depression. And then coming out of the Depression to periods of affluence. I want to ask you this too, Jack. I want to ask you this too, because you taught history, and I know you're a fan of history, and I know how deep thinker you are.
That's my profession.
Did you incorporate some of that into your showbiz as well? I mean, did you carry some of that history? Because you know George Carlin was masterful at that. Yeah. You know, Richard Pryor used his life experiences.
Well, that came to me later because at first, you know, I went to college after I was already performing in show business for many years. And I was going to take drama in college, but the drama department was not exactly, and all my A's were all in political science and history and economics, and so that's the way I went.
You gravitated towards
because I gravitated to that, so that helped, and it gives you a very broad view of things. For example, you can make, I used to write, I did more roast, I should be on a short order cook. All the roasts that I did, and they were all politicians. I'm talking about Sam Gibbons, Governor Graham, Helen Gordon Davis. I mean, I had
just lost her, didn't we?
Yeah, and you know, Alvin Martinez. Oh, these guys that were all people that were mayors. Mayor Greco. I roasted Greco, and I said atrocities about these people. And Sam Gibbons, and all, because I understood history, and I knew what was going on in the political world, because that's what I was teaching. Now you blend that in with an innate wacko comedy and that's what makes it writer. And I would write my own stuff. I was telling your wife, some of the insults, I look back and I say, how did I get in a roast?
Sure.
And everybody here, they were not pros like me. I was a professional comic, and the stuff that I wrote, I mean, I can't tell a lot of these on the air, but I said atrocities about governors and about
and kept your head the whole time,
and they loved
because
me
you
anyway.
were funny.
They loved me anyway because we had that what Pilar Ramírez said, tienes ángel.
Ángels.
You have. It doesn't say. She didn't say you have an angel.
Right.
She said you have angel, and I didn't know what that meant. And Ramon Bermudez tried to explain it to me. And it's what we've been talking about here, is that communication that an entertainer or two human beings have without talking to each other.
Special.
And they know how you feel no matter what you say. And sometimes you facetiously, we insult each other every morning.
At West Tampa Sandwich Shop.
Andrea, Matro Joanna, we laugh about it, but we say nobody's safe that comes into this place. Everybody, if that guy got lame, if he's like whatever, we jump on it. And nobody gets insulted because they know there's a communication, that they know how we really feel.
Right.
And if you have that, I think that's what she said when I took that scene and she said, "Tienes ángel."
Well, I'm going to take it to the next progression, and I'm going to say that I think the beginnings from whence we came, and this wonderful experiment that was Ybor City and West Tampa.
How lucky.
I think how lucky that we came, because I think it developed that, it nurtured us, and it made us tough, and it made us resilient, and it gave us that.
Well, there's two ways. There's two ways that you respond to prejudice, and we suffered that at first, like all immigrants do.
Of course.
When you're different, being different, and there's two ways that people react to that. Either they say, let's not get in trouble with the law. Okay, that's fine, and you just acquiesce to the beating, or you go the other way, and you become
intolerant,
and you say, I'm going to show you sons of guns and them sons of bitches what I can do. I'm going to prove to you that I'm just as good or better.
There you go.
And that's the other extreme. So we had that. Or some of us bowed and said, let's not get in trouble with the law. But then others reacted the other way. That's how we got master surgeons.
Correct.
We have governors.
Players.
We had senators. We have representatives. We have a wealth that came out of Jefferson High School.
Sure.
From that immigration.
Sure.
Look at it, man. I'm talking about people like Freddie Pacheco. I mean,
Bob Martinez.
Bob Martinez. Alvin Martinez. Victor.
Tony La Russa.
Come on, Tony La Russa. Come on. What do you want?
And that small little enclave.
And there were 700 kids in that school. We were a little school. We had a chip on our shoulder.
Feisty.
That was bigger than all the other schools put together.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the more beatings we got, the more intolerant we became, the more...
I think there was a dichotomy, just like the life that you lived, the dual life that you lived, where you were the big star on the island on the weekends, and then you come back here and you worked your normal life. I think that duality also gave us the inspiration to be strong, because we weren't going to take the beating.
Well, there was a battle
and then it kept us.
It was a battle between the spotlight and the family. You know, people from our immigration had very strong families, and we couldn't get away from that. No matter what show business did.
Pull was very strong.
Okay, it was a Phantom of the Opera thing, right?
Sure.
The Phantom is trying to take her away from the lights, to give her the lights and all that beautiful stuff. And the other life, she's falling in love with somebody, and she's going the other way for the regular life.
Right.
And the family life, I'm glad I made the right choice. But if I had lived, if that hadn't happened to me in Cuba, if I had gotten the breaks in this country that I got in that country, I may not be here, because I'd have been one of those half. Enough talent to get around, but not big enough. Might have been a little splash for a while, and then I would have been like Chess Davis, waking up in the morning with my hand like this, waiting to put a beer in it, so that I could tolerate a life without the spotlight. I found the other life, and I was lucky that I was able to compare the two lives. How many people get that chance? How many people have that chance?
Well, I think the luckiest people of all were those people here in Tampa that know you, Jack, that know you all these years, that have had the opportunity to sit and visit with you just like we have here tonight, and those guys that meet with you at West Tampa Sandwich
Shop. The bottom line is that I couldn't live without Tampa. That's the bottom line. And family and Tampa was part of the family.
Very strong. And why we fight so hard here on the show to preserve these memories, and why we fight so hard not to let them do the TBX thing, because we don't want them to destroy any more buildings, any more historic, buildings and areas of significance. Jack, where are you going to be? Can we tell them where you're going to be so they can come see you?
I have a couple of book signings, but it's not in the bookstores
I've got them here. Can I read it real quick?
Yeah.
Saturday, November 21st, mark this down, Saturday, November 21st, 9 a.m. to 12 noon, at, of course, the West Tampa Sandwich Shop. That's 3904 North Armenia Avenue, right there, just south of Tampa Bay Boulevard. And then Saturday, November 28th, Again, 9 to 12 noon at the Ybor City Museum, and that's at 1818 East 9th Avenue in Ybor City. The book is not available currently in the bookstores. Jack will have a few limited edition copies that he'll be happy to sign for you. If you'd like, we'll put this on our Facebook page. We'll also put it on our website, but just jot that down real quick. Saturday, November 21st, 9 to noon, West Tampa Sandwich Shop. Saturday, a week later, Saturday, November 28th, 9 to noon at the Ybor City Museum. Jack, it's always a pleasure and a privilege, and this hour just flies by. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you just want to say?
Is this over?
Almost. Got about a couple of minutes left.
Can I hang around here?
Of course you can. Let me tell
a few days?
Before we sign off, let me just tell everybody that next week on the show, we're going to have Dr. Bill Geyer, William Geyer. He's going to be joining us in studio.
Oh.
Dr. Geyer is a 1974 graduate of Hillsborough High School. He was their class president, but even beyond that, he's been our dentist, Sally and mine dentist, and our boys' dentist for the last 15 years since we moved back to Tampa. And he does some really, really neat and interesting work, Jack, with both Busch Gardens and Lowry Park Zoo. In his off time, he likes to work with the animals. And so when they need help, if they've got a hippo that's got a cavity or they've got a lion that needs a tooth that's cracked and needs to be repaired, they call Dr. Geyer. And he's going to be here next week with some
How
photographs.
about a giraffe with a sore throat?
A giraffe with a sore throat. Can you imagine
that?
So he's going to be here to share those stories and some amazing photographs as well. Jack, it's such a privilege to be with you. And you know how we feel about you here.
So
you know
much.
how we feel about you here. We just can't get enough of your stories.
Well, I'll tell you, anybody that doesn't like me is ignorant.
Well, Jack, we're privileged. And look, just do us a big favor, okay? If there's more that you haven't included in Saka Fiesta, please get busy. And because I know you don't buy green avocados.
Let me tell you what, I don't.
I know that about you.
I don't exactly. I don't plan too much future, okay?
We got about 45 seconds to go. Thank you so much for being there tonight to listen to us and to once again pay tribute to our dear, dear friend, Jack Espinosa. We didn't take any calls tonight, even though the phone was here, because I just couldn't stop Jack from telling his stories. I didn't want to, Jack. I didn't want to. So raise that glass, Jack. Raise that glass with me. And let's just say it like we always do here at the Tampa Native Show. Thank you for being there. Thank you, our sponsors, for always being generous with your money. On behalf of everybody that puts this show together, I'm Mario Nunez. This is the wonderful Jack Espinosa. Salud.
Happy days.
And happy days, Tampa. We love you, and we'll see you next week. Thanks so much, Jack.
Thank you.
We were younger, and everything seemed new. We used to have a lot of fun, yes we did, no matter what we do. Sleepy days, long summer nights, going anywhere we please, with love that I could call my own, love that I've always known, the city that I call my home, a home from which I never roam. This love affair was meant to be. I love her and she loves me. I remember Tampa, oh, she remembers me. She remembers me. I remember, yeah, yes I do. Oh, I remember, yeah, me and you. I'm a Tampa native, Tampa native, can't you see? I will share my story with you to preserve its history.
Don't forget, Thursdays, 7 p.m. on TBCN, home of the Tampa Native Show.